We begin with MSNBC's Katy Tur, our friend and colleague and partner at the courthouse today. Katy, talk about the key takeaways so far from the closing argument by Donald Trump's lead attorney.
It has been so fascinating listening to Todd Blanche give his final summation. When he got up and first introduced himself once again to the jury, he thanked them for their service, thanked them for the time that they have spent on this case, thanked them for paying such close attention to the testimony and to all of the evidence. But I was struck by his tone and by his manner. He didn't seem fully confident in those moments, didn't seem fully confident in the way that he was delivering his thank you. And then he hasn't entirely seemed confident throughout his summation. I mean, he's gotten some speed here and there. He's gotten into a rhythm at times. But for the most part, it does feel like he's winding his way through this as you listen to it. There were moments where the arguments felt tighter, and there were moments where the arguments felt pretty loose, not going in a clean sequence. He seems to be getting at the nothing to see here defense by saying that these documents, these allegedly falsified documents, weren't falsified at all. They were legal documents done correctly by the Trump Organization. He made the point to say that he tried to claim and to argue to the jury, which I think is a stretch, and you'll see it as a stretch as well, that the agreement that he had, that Donald Trump had with AMI in the beginning of the campaign was fine, that it was perfectly normal, that candidates and campaigns always try to influence and work with media outlets to place positive stories and to bury negative stories. That is not the way it works when you're covering a presidential campaign or any campaign for that matter. Obviously, the campaign will try to spin you. The candidate will try to spin you. But you're never buying a story and covering it up and burying it on behalf of the candidate. There was one line in particular that drew a gasp, at least, from the overflow room where I was, and that is every campaign is a conspiracy between two people to promote a candidate. That is an exaggeration of what a campaign is, and it is an exaggeration of what Donald Trump is, a diplomatic exaggeration of what Donald Trump is accused, generous, of doing here in this case. Regarding the emails between Michael Cohen and Allen Weisselberg, they say that there wouldn't be these emails if this was really a fraud to cover something up. There wouldn't be emails with Don Jr. and Eric Trump regarding paying Michael Cohen if this really was a scheme to cover something up. There'd be no evidence at all if this was such a scheme. Also, interestingly, he tried to argue 2 points on Donald Trump. One, that he was such a micromanager, so involved in the payments out of his organization, that he would never pay Michael Cohen more money than Michael Cohen deserved, in talking about the doubling of the Stormy Daniels rate, saying that instead it was just a retainer agreement, that he was paid $35,000 a month and a bonus because that's what Donald Trump agreed to hold Michael Cohen to after Donald Trump became president and retained Michael Cohen as his personal lawyer, that $35,000 a month was a normal fee, that Donald Trump knew that was going out. But at the same time, they also were arguing that he was so busy at the White House, he wasn't paying close attention to each and every invoice. He had so much going on. So in two ways, trying to say Donald Trump was a micromanager, he understood everything, but then also was so busy he couldn't possibly have overseen all of the nitty-gritty details of what this payment involved and what Michael Cohen alleges. As we expected, ladies, they really went after Michael Cohen, or Todd Blanche is going after Michael Cohen as hard as he can, trying to say that Michael Cohen was out for himself. He's a liar. You can't trust anything he says. Trying to lessen the meaningfulness of the testimony from David Pecker and others, instead trying to focus this entire case on the words of Michael Cohen, who they believe they have the best chance of discrediting.
Katy, now, as Todd Blanche is talking about Stormy Daniels, he is painting her as a liar and an extortionist. But since you covered the Trump campaign, I want to ask you about something that literally just went into the document. Todd Blanche talking about the Access Hollywood tape. The government wants you to believe, says Todd Blanche, it was so catastrophic that it provided a motive for President Trump to do something criminal. And there is no evidence of that. President Trump did not react to the Access Hollywood tape in any ways that the government is suggesting. And I want to get your take on that statement by Todd Blanche as someone who lived it?
Well, I'm curious what the prosecution's going to argue here, because as somebody who was covering the campaign in the moment, the Access Hollywood tape, from the outside looking in and from the conversations I was having with those in the campaign and those in the RNC at the time, that tape was catastrophic. Donald Trump's campaign thought it was over at that moment. There were a couple people who thought he could power through it. They were Steve Bannon, maybe Donald Trump himself, and a couple others. But for the most part, the campaign went silent. The top aides were not to be found. The campaign team couldn't even reach these top aides. Trump Tower, I went to Trump Tower right after this tape came out, and it was empty. There was nobody inside there save for Steve Bannon. There was an abandoning of the ship mentality. Paul Ryan was telling lawmakers, go with your heart, do whatever you can. Senator Lee from Utah was crying on camera in a selfie video saying he could never support somebody like Donald Trump. It seemed like it was the end. That's how the RNC saw it as well, in my conversations with sources at the RNC at the time. So to say that it didn't matter, I think is not accurate. It did matter to the campaign. The prosecution now has the task of trying to prove to the jury that that was a motivation for Donald Trump to conceal these records, to conceal this payment, and to mislead the public about what he was actually paying for. Because a hush money payment to an adult film star that he had sex with while he was married could potentially, the prosecution will argue, be the nail in Donald Trump's campaign, the nail in the coffin for his campaign, especially after the Access Hollywood tape. They were very worried, specifically about suburban women.